So good afternoon, everyone. For those who are watching, we are doing a presentation today for the family engagement. This is the Works for Me family engagement recording on working and my benefits. Today we have two speakers, Lindsey Martin and Stephen Seeberg. They're from Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, or OOD, and they are going to present on the benefits. So I'm going to turn it over to Lindsey and Stephen, and go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. All right, I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Oh, okay. So we should all be looking at a working in my benefits screen right now. So I'm Lindsey Martin, and today's presentation is going to address some of the questions that we often hear from people who get benefits from Social Security. You know, there are a lot of fears out there that working at all will make you lose your benefits. So we're here to talk to you through those Social Security programs. We want you to understand them so that you can learn a little bit about how many of the times, most of the time, you can work and keep those benefits. So to start with, I'm Lindsey Martin. As I said, I am the program administrator of Works for Me, and I'm also a certified work incentives practitioner. And I'm gonna hand the mic over to my co-host to introduce himself.
And Lindsey, can you maximize your screen?
Yes.
Yes, there we go.
And I am Stephen Seeberg. I'm the Works for Me dedicated work incentives consultant with OOD.
Okay, so today what we'll cover is a pretty broad understanding of the Social Security programs, benefit programs. First, we're going to take some time and go through the cash benefit programs, supplemental security income, which you may have heard called SSI, and also Social Security Disability Insurance, which you may have heard called SSDI. That one you may also actually have heard of something called Childhood Disability Insurance, or CDB. So we'll talk more about those in a bit. And then we'll also, of course, go into healthcare, Medicare, and Medicaid and how those can be impacted by work. And part of this will be, looking at several examples. And then at the end, we want to wrap up and just share some of the other benefits information and some resources with you. All right.
All right, again, good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, or good morning, whenever you happen to be watching this. So we're going to start with a few of the myths surrounding benefits that we hear a lot of the people that come to us say or worry about. There's a lot of misconceptions out there. First and foremost, people are worried that if they start losing, they're going to lose their benefit check. Start working, they're going to lose their benefit check, which is obviously a major concern. Oh, it's not advancing. There it goes. However, that's not necessarily true. So as long as you stay under certain income limits, you are able to keep at least some, if not all, of your benefits. For this year, if you earn under $1,620 a month on SSDI, you keep it. And you can earn up to $2,000 a month on SSI and still keep a portion of that benefit. That benefit changes, and we'll talk about how those programs work in a little bit. But as long as you stay under those income limits, you keep some or all of those cash benefits that you're currently receiving. Now it's progressing well. Good. Another myth we hear often is if I start working, I'm going to lose my health coverage. My Medicaid's going to be gone. I'm going to lose Medicare. Those are big worries. Those can be big expenses. We understand why that's a big issue. But the reality is, if you keep that benefit check, you're going to keep your healthcare coverage, plain and simple. As long as you're receiving that check, even if your SSI check drops to a really low amount, as long as you're getting it, the associated healthcare, Medicaid or Medicare, will come with it. And further, even if you earn enough that you lose one of these benefits, if you stop receiving your SSI or if you stop receiving SSDI, you're going to be able to keep that for at least several years in the case of Medicare, or you can even stay on Medicaid indefinitely through a certain program with your SSI benefit. So even losing those checks does not mean that you will automatically lose access to the healthcare coverage that you're currently receiving. Okay, so again, your Medicaid coverage through SSI, you can actually stay on that indefinitely, as long as you maintain all the other requirements like meeting the resource limit and things like that. And Medicare, you can stay on for at least 7 years after losing an SSDI or CDB check. So there's work incentives that do exist that allow you to stay on those healthcare coverages even if you lose your benefit check. It's another really big misconception we want to try to dispel. Okay. Lastly, the myth number three. If I start working, I'm going to lose my check and it's not worth it. I'll have less money overall, right? And so there's no point in me going to work because those checks drop and I'm not going to have as much money. That's almost all the time not true either. Okay. People almost always will earn more, have more money overall when they work. If you're on SSI, that's the case 100% of the time. If you work more, you'll have more money, plain and simple. With SSDI, it's a little more complex. It can change. If you make a little bit more money, you may lose the SSDI check. But again, there are work incentives in place that will allow you to try to reduce your earned income. And there's also we we don't want you to lose those benefits, right? So we're going to work with you to maximize what we can and hope you earn what you can at the same time. Okay. So that's really not something that happens for the vast majority of people. And so hopefully some of those myths that you've heard about or seen or had to deal with, you feel a little bit better about those. So we're going to get into kind of the nitty gritty of some of these programs. Okay, we're going to start with cash benefit programs, and this is the SSI program, your supplemental security income. It's based on financial needs and your income. There's always a maximum number each year. It's called the federal benefit rate. This year, that number is $967 a month. So that's the most that you can have if you're only receiving SSI. If you have no other sources of income, whether it be earned income or unearned income, like an SSDI check. And yes, it is true that the more money you make, your SSI check does reduce. But as you'll see here momentarily, it does not reduce dollar for dollar. It does not drop as fast as your earned income increases. Okay, so if we can go forward a little bit, here's how the formula works in general. After the first $65 to $85, or after the first, those are called income exclusions, for every $2 you earn, your SSI check only drops by $1. So it's dropping by less than half of the amount of money that you are earning. So even though you will see that check number go down, your total income number will increase. And we'll show you how that works in just a second. So here's a nice bar graph, some example wages and how this would work for you for your income overall. As you can see over here on the left, this is a person who's just receiving SSI. They have no wages, they have no earned income at all. And again, $967 is the maximum that that person can receive each month. But then as you start to work, maybe you make $500 in a month, maybe $1,000 in a month, so on and so forth. You can see the SSI check does drop, but your total income increases. And we'll have some numbers up here above those bar graphs. Look at that. So if you're making $1,000 a month, that's already more than you were receiving in SSI. And when you add what will be left of your SSI check, which is $1,510 a month, you're making well over $500 a month more by working than you were by staying on SSI alone and not getting out into the community and working. So it's again always to your benefit when you're on SSI to work. That's just how the system is set up. Okay. So we have a little example here to try to give you an idea of how your SSI check is calculated by Social Security each month. So we're going to start with this number, $585. Let's say that's what you have made in a given month. Okay, after we take that number, we have income exclusions that come off of it. The Social Security does not count against you. So there's first a general income exclusion, that's $20 each month that comes off of that number. And then there's a $65 earned income exclusion because they treat earned income much more favorably. So now you're down to just $500 in countable income, we call it. Then after that, they take that number and divide it by 2. So you end up left with only $250 in countable income from that original $585 a month. And that is the number that Social Security uses to subtract from that federal benefit rate to determine how much you get in your SSI check. So you get that 967, subtract the 250, and your SSI check is still $717 for that month. And when you add that to your earned income, which, as you remember up here at the top was $585, you can see the total again. Okay, we're over $1,300 a month for this particular individual. And that again is well over the maximum that you can receive from Social Security on SSI, which is just $967 a month. So again, it's just another example showing you kind of how they do those calculations, but those calculations show that it's always in your favor to work when you are on SSI. Okay. And here's another nice visual with some bigger bar graphs to give you an idea. So right now, Robert's not working. Okay, he's only getting his SSI check, his 967 a month in 2025. But then he finds a job out in the community, and he's working 15 hours a week at about $14 an hour. That equals $909 a month in wages. So in this situation, Robert is now making almost as much as he was getting from SSI alone, and he's still getting $555 a month in SSI. So that's a huge difference, and you'll see just how big that difference is. So we're at $1,464 a month, which is almost $500 more a month, and you'll see just how that adds up quickly. Okay. It's $5,964 more in a calendar year. Okay, that's a lot of money, and if we're leaving that on the table by thinking that we can't work because we're going to have less money, it's you can see that that's just not the case. Anytime someone's on SSI, we've said it before, we'll say it again, you will have more money by working than by not working, plain and simple. And this is something that is very, very important, especially in situations like with this Works for Me program. Um, so when you need to report your wages, a lot of times right now, these people are having their wages reported. You guys are having your rep payee do it. A lot of times it may be the specific workshop that's helping you do that, like a Goodwill or an Easter Seals or whoever you may be working with. But if you go out into the community and begin working those, the wages sometimes get lost in the shuffle. We forget that they need to continue reporting wages. So when you start getting these jobs in the community, it's really important to have a plan for how to report your wages to Social Security. You want to have a record of that as often as possible to make sure that if something goes wrong on their end, you've got a record of no, hey, look here, I sent in my pay stubs once a month, or I use the mobile wage reporting app. You can download that on any smartphone for SSI specifically and report your wages there monthly. A lot of people also create a My SSA account, is what it's called, on this login.gov website. It's got a lot of nice tools there. You can report your earnings, and it's recorded there, so you have a record of it. And you can see what your benefits may look like in the future if you continue to work at the rate that you're working right now. It'll give you an estimate of what that could look like down the road as well. But the bottom line is we want those wages to get to Social Security and preferably in a way that it gets recorded so that you have record and you have proof of these earnings in case something goes wrong on the back end. You can say, hey, no, I reported these. This is what I was making. So you don't have to worry about a potential overpayment. That's where it comes in. Those can hit pretty hard. Social Security has recently made some changes as well that makes it a little bit easier for them to get that money from you if they want to. So as long as you keep a record and you can say, hey, no, this is what we've got, then it should help you avoid any of those potential problems from Social Security. Okay.
So I'm gonna start talking to you. We just went through SSI, one of the need-based programs, and another concern that a lot of people often have is about their Medicaid coverage. Will they lose it if they go back to work? Because healthcare, obviously, incredibly important. So the good news is that Social Security makes it very easy to start working and not lose your Medicaid. They've set up a lot of programs to make it possible to explore this. And as you can see right here in the middle is that there are a bunch of different Medicaid programs that are designed for different financial situations, so to speak. And so the first one that we can see is this first one here called SSI Medicaid. And it's probably the most common one, the Medicaid you would be on if you get an SSI check each month. Now these other two programs down here, 1619B Medicaid and Medicaid buy-in for workers with disabilities, these are ones that might be relevant if you want to start earning a bit more money by going to work. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about those on the next slide. Before I do that, I just want to highlight another part of Medicaid, which is obviously quite relevant. I know a lot of the people we connect with through Works4Me do have waivers through Medicaid. So these are extra services that you would get if you qualify medically. A lot of times they're called home and community-based services, HCBS waivers. And so for any of the Medicaid programs that we discussed today, if you qualify medically for a waiver, you will keep that waiver and you won't have to pay anything extra in the ones that we're talking about today. So, I like to think of Medicaid programs as like a way to think about it is looking at a kind of imaginary staircase. So this staircase that we can see that goes from left to right up the screen is like, it's an income staircase. What happens as you earn more and more from a job? So at the bottom, on the bottom left, is SSI Medicaid. You know, this is when your income is maybe a bit lower. So anytime you get an SSI check, you would automatically get SSI Medicaid. If you don't have any other benefits like SSDI or CDB and you only get SSI, then you could earn wages up to $2,018 in 2025 and still keep this kind of Medicaid. That's a pretty high amount. But what happens, say you go to work, you want to start earning even more. Social Security was thinking, you know, they want to make it possible for you to explore working. So if you lose your SSI check, if it goes to zero, like in that table we looked at earlier, because of your work income, then you get automatically switched to this program that's called 1619B Medicaid. And you can see here on this third bullet point that the income limit is pretty high. Annual income, complete annual income though, not just your work wages, of $46,314. That's pretty high. Now, if you're on 1619B Medicaid, you do still have to meet the other requirements of Medicaid, which have to do with if you have any other unearned income, by which I mean other benefit checks, and also your resources have to be $2,000 or lower. And you can see that on SSI Medicaid and 1619B Medicaid, I noted they're both free and they're automatic enrollments. But let's now imagine, gosh, I want to work even more. Or let's imagine I do have another benefit check. So I, started making a little bit too much even for 1619B. Well, we have another option. And that is what we call Medicaid buy-in for workers with disabilities. And when it's a great one for if you work part-time, at least. If you can't get 1619B Medicaid, it's a great option. It is one you have to sign up for, and it does have a small premium that you pay monthly, so a small payment each month. But it's also good for like another specific situation. So if you have a waiver, but let's imagine you never actually got SSI, but you had a waiver. Sometimes you can be on Medicaid that way. And if you start making a good amount of money, you can end up having to pay a monthly payment that can get kind of high with your waiver. If you work at least part-time, you can look at Medicaid buy-in for workers with disabilities, and that monthly payment can be incredibly low. And I'm just going to give you one example. If you only get Medicaid but no SSDI, no other benefit check, and you make $1,500 a month, your premium should be really low, like in the teens, under $20. So it's a very low premium relative to your total income. And then as I have here on the bottom of the screen, note if you do qualify for waiver services, you would keep those in addition to any of these programs. Okay. So far we've been talking about SSI and Medicaid. And those two are kind of related and part of like one part of Social Security benefits. So now we're going to shift gears, and we're going to talk about a completely different part of Social Security benefits. And that is SSDI, which is also called Social Security Disability Insurance. You may have also heard of Childhood Disability Benefits, or CDB. So what's different about these is that, number one, they're not based on your financial need or your income like SSI is. You get them based on, you see on the first bullet point, your work record. So basically, you work enough and you put the time in, and therefore you earn a certain amount of payment that you might get. Now, that amount, therefore, is set by how long you worked, whether it's you, the self, which would be SSDI, or say a parent, right? CDB would be an instance of if you have not worked, but your mom or dad worked and had a work record, and then you could collect on that if you're eligible. Now, in this case, the thing about SSDI and CDB is that, number one, they're based on work record. So they also only look at how much you earn when you go to work. So they don't really look at any of your other benefit checks. They don't look at SSI to see how much you should get. And if you get this, that amount you get stays the same every month. So it's not a matter of it changing kind of the gradations like you saw with SSI. It's either you're eligible and you get that total amount, or you don't get it and you don't get that check at all that month. So I know that can be a little scary. So a lot of people are kind of hesitant to explore working on SSDI or CDB. But Social Security has a lot of different programs to help you try out working and see how it goes. And I think of them as different kind of stages. So you go through these different stages, and in each one, you get to try out working, as I say, see how it's going, see how much you can work, and if you want to explore supporting yourself, or if you want to try out, end up deciding to work just a little to supplement your benefits. So these two stages are the trial work period and the extended period of eligibility. And you might also have heard them referred to as the acronyms, because we love our acronyms in this world. Trial work period, or TWP, or extended period of eligibility, or EPE. So in the next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what those mean. All right. So because SSDI and CDB have different stages, it helps to look at it in terms of a kind of a timeline. You can tell I like my visuals. So what you're looking at now is an arrow that goes from left to right on the slide. And at the far left is a box that says SSDI or CDB starts. So the first stage we have is that trial work period. This is a chance for you to try earning money, as much money as you want, for 9 months. In these, we call these trial work months. So 9 months, they don't actually have to be consecutive. And any time you make over $1,160 in 2025, Social Security says that's one of your trial work months. So they're in the background kind of checking, okay, you worked one where you made over $1,160. There we go, trial work month number 1. And you keep counting those up. It's over a 5-year period. And when you hit that 9th trial work month, we go into the next stage. So what's great about this is they're just kind of in the background saying, oh, did you earn over that amount? Trial work month number 1. Maybe that's in August of 2025. And then let's imagine September and October, you don't work at all. And then in November, you work and earned $1,200 again. So in that case, your first trial work month would be August, and your second one would be in November. What's great, again, is that while they're counting those up, you still get to keep that SSDI or CDB check. So it's really just like a nice test. All right, so you hit your 9th trial work month. What happens next? The month after it, the next stage starts, and it's called the extended period of eligibility. Now, this one's different because the length doesn't depend on how much you earn. You know, the trial work period it's 9 months spread out over 5 years. You could do that in 9 months in a row, or they could be spread out over 3.5 years, depending on how often you earn that much. The extended period of eligibility, or the EPE, is 36 months. In a row, 3 calendar years. So if you start in January 2026, you're going to go through the next 3 years. Now, at this point, in addition to the length being different, the actual income threshold is different. So in this stage, we have, it's called SGA, Substantial Gainful Activity, this number here, over $1,620 in 2025. So if you're in this stage and you make over that amount, for that month, you don't get your SSDI or CDB check. But you can see that number is a good bit higher than the number we were looking at in the trial work period. So you can make up to $1,619 in 2025 in a month, and you still keep getting your SSDI or CDB check. And if you don't get it because you made it over that, that's just for that month, and you can restart your benefit the next month if your income drops. Just make a phone call. So this is another kind of great opportunity to keep testing out, can I work? How much can I work? So the next stage, so that we call that the EPE. It ends after 36 months. What happens after? We don't actually have a name for it. We're just going to say after the EPE. And at this point, we have that same threshold. In 2025, $1,620. Under it, you keep your SSDI or your CDB check. Over it, that is where if you make over it and you're outside of that EPE, your benefits terminate. And I know that can be pretty stressful and scary. And so what Social Security did is they said, well, if your benefits terminate and then you can't continue working because you have an exacerbation of your disability, we have this avenue called expedited reinstatement. So if within 5 years you have to cut back on work due to your disability and you still qualify, you can pursue this option to get your benefits again. You don't have to go through a whole new application. So you can see there are a lot of different ways and stages you can go through to try out your benefits. I know a lot of people, try this EPE and then go after and keep their income under this threshold, which is $1,620 in 2025, goes up every year, obviously. And they kind of just stay there and they keep their benefits. So it depends what works for you, and you'll have a chance then to try out different options. And then the bottom right of the screen, I have a note that just says $1,620 is the limit in 2025 for a non-blind individual. They have higher limits for folks who are blind. So for this next slide, we're actually looking at the same arrow with the 3 stages: trial work period, EPE, and after the EPE. But let's simplify it a little bit. Let's just say we have 2 stages. We have the trial work period, and then we have after the trial work period. And the reason I want to highlight that for you is to help you understand what your big takeaways are. During that trial work period, you can earn as much as you want and keep your SSDI or CDB check. After that trial work period, that's when you want to think about that limit that in 2025 is $1,620. And then if you stay under that, you can keep your SSDI or CDB check. So that's kind of a nice way to keep track of where you are. The next slide is going to help you think about how do you keep track of it. So this is going to be a pretty in detail image that I'm going to show you, but this is really just to show you how we can help you keep track. So Stephen is a work incentives consultant, work incentives practitioner, and I'm certified as well. And Stephen does this great work sitting down individually with families to say, hey, what are the benefits that you get? I'm going to go talk to Social Security and double check what those benefits are. And then I'm going to write a whole report for you. We call it a work incentives plan within OOD. I'm going to write a whole report for you and help you think about what would happen if I went to work 15 hours a week for $12 an hour. What would happen if I decided to go to work 25 hours a week for $12 an hour? And he'll write a whole report with a bunch of different scenarios. Part of what we do also is help people figure out where are they with SSDI, which is why we're looking at this slide here. So this is a blank table that across the top are the months, January through December. And on the left, we have your countable earnings and your benefit status. So the next table is going to show up with some numbers in it. Let's just I'm not going to go through all of these. I just wanted to show you January. You can see in the very top left box, we say year is 2025. The TWP, as I told you, is 1,160. And that other threshold number, 1,620, is known as the SGA. So January, we see, oh, I made $1,300 in January. So I'm going to write that down in that table. And then on the row below it, I'm going to say, you know what? I made over that first limit of $1,160. So I'm going to make a note in this table and just say, trial work month number 1. Great, now I know I used it. And that little $sign under it just tells me, hey, I also got my benefit check that month. So this is something that when Stephen or any other work incentive consultant meet with you, they can help you kind of build this chart and learn how to use it. Because it's, a bit to learn, but once you figure out how to do it, then you can feel pretty confident and understand where you are in the process. All right.
All right, I am back again. So now we've talked about our SSI and how that's sort of linked to Medicaid, and those two sort of are intertwined. Lindsey just covered the SSDI and the CDB programs, and those are sort of closely enmeshed with Medicare coverage. Okay, so first and foremost, if you receive an SSDI or a CDB cash benefit, after a 2-year waiting period, you receive Part A Medicare coverage free of charge. That's your hospital insurance. So again, after 2 years, as long as you're receiving an SSDI or a CDB check, you have Part A coverage for free. Part B coverage, that's we call it like your common use insurance. So doctor's visits, visits to urgent care, physicals, preventative screenings, things like that. The things you tend to use health insurance more often. That's Part B. That's your Part B Medicare. The premium for this year is $185 a month, which isn't super terrible, but it's also not super cheap either. But there are several programs tied to Medicare again that help pay those Part B premiums for you. And one program that actually covers all other associated Medicare costs as well, like deductibles and copays, things of that nature. Those are all dependent on your earnings. So that's done at your local JFS department. They can take a look at your earnings and tell you, okay, you qualify for this program or that program or the other program to get some or potentially all of your Medicare costs covered. Okay. Now, this is where things can get a little bit convoluted or in the weeds, as I like to say. What if you're getting both SSI and SSDI or CDB? Things can get pretty complicated pretty quickly. Essentially, if you get both of them, the rules for the program remain the same. Okay, those things don't change a lot. The main difference is now when Social Security calculates how much you receive on that SSI benefit each month, there's also that SSDI check or CDB check, that unearned income that factors into how much your SSI check is decreased. This does happen fairly often. I actually had a case last month where someone got SSDI and CDB and SSI. So it does happen, believe it or not, and they sort of interact a little bit strangely. So we're going to try to sort of clear up some of that confusion if we can. Again, the rules stay basically the same. So your SSI check is still treated better for your earned income. You're still only losing $1 for every $2 you earn after those general income exclusions. So we've got some examples coming up for you here on the next slide. So here's a sample of what this could look like if you're receiving both of those cash benefits. So let's say an individual has $610 a month right here in their SSDI. You subtract $20. Well, it went away, but it came back. All right. You subtract $20 for the general income exclusion. So now you have $590 in countable unearned income that Social Security will take into account. This individual looks like they're making $844 a month in wages. So we would subtract $65 from that for your or your earned income exclusion, excuse me, and then divide that in half, and that gives us $389.50. So then your countable unearned income, which was up here $590, gets added to your countable earned income, which is $389.50, and that total is $979.50. So between those two, you've made more than the maximum SSI cash benefit, which is $967. So in a month like this individual would not receive an SSI cash benefit. In this case, this person would still get their Medicaid through 1619B, and we'll have a chart that talks about that in a moment. But this person wouldn't receive their SSI check in this scenario for this particular month. We're going to look at something pretty similar here, okay? So we've got Rachel. Rachel's getting SSDI and SSI. Again, she's getting $610 a month in SSDI, and that leaves her with $377 a month in SSI before she finds a new job, okay? Once she gets that job, she's working about 15 hours a week and making $13 an hour. That's $844 a month in gross wages. So what that would look like overall is right here. Again, with no job, she was only bringing in $987 a month. Okay, that's essentially that federal benefit rate plus the $20 general income exclusion. So with the job, her wages are $844 a month by themselves. So that's almost equivalent to the 987 she was bringing in without working. Yes, her SSI check does go to zero, and we understand that's concerning. You see a benefit check drop all the way down to, oh my gosh, I have no money coming in. How am I going to possibly handle all these things that I've been paying for with this money that I had before I started working? But what you have to remember is you're keeping your SSDI check with these wages. $844 a month is well below the SGA level, which is $1,620 a month for this year. So your SSDI check stays. It doesn't go anywhere. So your total income is $1,454 a month, which is obviously far preferable to $987 a month. So now the thought is, okay, great, I'm making more money, but now because I'm making more money, I'm going to lose all my healthcare coverage and it's going to come out in the wash. I'm not going to end up with any more money overall. And thankfully, with some of these work incentives that we've talked about previously, that's not the case either. Okay. So over here on the left, when Rachel wasn't working, her Part A was free. Her Part B was free, and she qualified for a program known as QMB, which would have paid all of her associated Medicare costs, the Part B premiums, deductibles, copays, things like that. As far as her Medicaid coverage, her SSI Medicaid and her waiver services were both free. Well, as you can see, not a ton changes with this nice increase in income that Rachel has. So we're making several $100s a month more. Our Part A is still free because, again, that always comes with your SSDI check. As long as you're receiving that benefit, your Part A coverage remains free. Your Part B, you have switched to a different program. It's called Slim B or SLMB, but it's still paying your Part B premiums every month. So that $185 a month for this year is not your responsibility. It's still paying that. And as far as your Medicaid is concerned, your waiver services are still free. That hasn't changed at all. And your SSI Medicaid has been switched to 1619B Medicaid. That's just because you're no longer receiving an SSI cash benefit in this scenario, but the coverage is the same and it's still free. So the benefit is clear overall. You're maybe paying an occasional deductible and a copay for your Part B, but you're making almost $500 a month more total. So when you take into account everything, working, not working, healthcare coverage or lack thereof, it's nearly always to your benefit to find that job and keep working. And this here is sort of, for lack of a better way to say it, it's my plug for my own services and why I do what I do as a WIPC, as a consultant. This is one of the tools, one of the things that we will put in a WIP report, or I do at least, every single time I do one. It's a really nice visual. The idea is we've gone through this report. Some of the language gets a little dense and a little heavy, but this is a one-page snapshot of how all of your benefits look at the moment, what your current situation is like, and then what it would look like in several potential scenarios that seem the most likely based on how much you're looking to work in the community and how much you're looking to make. So for this individual, just as an example, in their current situation, they've got an SSDI payment, which is not too bad. It's $1,220 a month. And they're working in sub-minimum wage employment and making about $375 a month. So that totals $1,595 a month. The Medicare coverage, as you can see, Part A is free and Part B premiums are being paid. They have a level one Medicaid waiver, and that's free. And they're also utilizing MBIWD, and that's also free. That's that Medicaid buy-in for workers with disabilities that we talked about a little bit earlier. And then as we go up these scenarios, if you look at this bottom row here, they're making more and more and more money, and not a whole heck of a lot is changing with regards to their coverages and what they have to pay for them. So there's a switch right here where you can see that the Part B premiums switch over to being paid by different programs called Medicare buy-in. Um, that's really just something that JFS does on the back end because the money has to come out of a different administrative bucket, but the coverage stays the same. So your Part B premium, $185 a month, is still being covered, even all the way up here when we're making over $2,300 a month. The only real difference is as we start to make more money, that small premium, that monthly premium for MBIWD does come into play. But even at the highest level, we're making $2,300 a month, and we're only being charged $39 a month for our MBIWD services, and that keeps your waiver free as well. So as you can see, we make more and more and more money, and our coverages stay essentially the same. They don't change a lot, and it's still really within our benefit to work, even with respect to healthcare coverage or anything like that. Oh, there we go. Um, And so some takeaways from all of that, that's a lot of stuff that we covered. I know it can get a little heavy and a little dense. We want you to know that if you're receiving SSI, you will always make more money working compared to not working. That will not change if you're receiving an SSI cash benefit. Um, if you're on SSDI or CDB, as long as your earnings stay under that SGA level, that's $1,620 a month, you'll keep that check. It's not going to go anywhere. So $1,600 a month, you know, in perpetuity, you still should be able to get that cash benefit. And the one thing I'm always passionate about, please, please, please make sure you're reporting that income. If you're moving from, a workshop into competitive integrative employment, make sure you have a plan for when and where and how you're going to get that income reported so that you have a record of it to head off any potential issues coming from the back end at Social Security. And there are a few other benefits that we do talk about in these reports that we want to make sure you're aware of. One of the big ones is SNAP or the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. A lot of individuals do have some of this each month. In general, your SNAP payment will go down as you earn more money. You'll have more money overall by working, but that payment can drop. This should link you to a SNAP screener on the state's Job and Family Services website. It takes into account a lot of information that even we don't have access to, such as a rent payment, utilities, cell phone, things of that nature. But you can plug in all those numbers and then put in your estimated new earnings from the job, and it'll give you an idea of what a new SNAP payment may look like. In general, if somebody is receiving SSI, you will be eligible for some form of SNAP. There are rare exceptions, um, such as an individual who may be living in an intermediate care facility or something like that. But for the most part, if you are on SSI, you do likely qualify for at least some SNAP payment each month. SSDI tends to be a little different because the dollar values on some SSDI checks can vary pretty significantly. But that's a tool for you to use if you're on SNAP and you want to see how some new earnings may affect your SNAP payments. As far as housing vouchers are concerned, or subsidies, in general, if you're receiving assistance with housing payments, your rent tends to be about 30% of your total income. So again, as you make more money, that rent will go up, but they are only checking that once a year. So you'll have a few months to sort of try and get things in line, depending on when your yearly review comes up. And then you can figure out what a rent increase may look like for you from there. And lastly, a nice benefit that I always like to bring up when I'm doing these analysis meetings with people is the stable account. It's essentially a state-run savings account. It's a great resource, especially for people who are worried about that Medicaid resource limit. So if somebody has maybe $1,500 in their bank account and your SSDI check comes in of $800, well, now there's $2,300 in there, which is not a lot of money, as we all know, but that's over the $2,000 resource limit. So you could potentially lose your SSI check and your Medicaid coverage for that month. But with this account, you can put up to $100,000 in a stable account, and it will not count against your resource limit for your Medicaid coverage. So it's a great tool to sort of, I like to say, legally hide your money so that you are able to continue receiving Medicaid and other benefits and you don't have to worry about it. Accessing the money is pretty easy. You can get a debit card linked to it if you would like, and anything that improves your quality of life, you can pay for. So if you need a vehicle, if you want to take a vacation, if you need some new clothes for a job, whatever it may be, those are all things that you are able to take money out of that account to put towards. And again, you can put a lot of money in. Anybody can put up to $19,000 a year into a stable account. So if there's an inheritance or someone is feeling really generous around Christmas time, you can put all that money in there and it's no problem. And if you want to put additional money in from your earned income, you can put an extra $15,060 in for this year. So you could put over 34 grand in it this year to get a nice head start on it if you start a stable account. Okay. And lastly, for me here, we have some other resources linked for you guys to look at your leisure. Ohio DB 101 is a really nice resource. It takes a lot of this jargon, this heavy, dense material, and breaks them down into some short videos that are a lot easier to access for people. Of course, we have our website, Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. You can apply for services here and do many other things. And we also have a link to your state Department of Job and Family Services website. You could check your SNAP there. You can apply for MBIWD or other programs that you may qualify for on that website. So it's definitely worth taking a look at as well.
All right. This is Lindsey speaking again. It's my turn. So yeah, we have had a chance to go through, I think of it as the four main areas: SSI, and then the associated Medicaid, and then SSDI or CDB, and the associated Medicare. So, this is pretty, we can give general information. I just want to reiterate that if you are watching this and thinking, but gosh, but what about my situation? That is where having that one-on-one meeting and that report from Stephen or another work incentives consultant would give you the information you need. That table that we looked at that had a ton of information, you could get one for yourself that would be relevant to exactly what you're currently doing and exactly what you are considering doing. So the slide we're looking at right now is kind of a giant step back. As we mentioned at the beginning, Stephen and I are part of Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities and work on a program called Works4Me. And you may have heard about Works4Me, probably have from, some of the family engagement team here or from your provider. But just a little bit of information about the program. Our goal is to offer work experiences to eligible people. Probably if you're a family member, maybe your loved one who works at one of these providers, and those people who want to discover new strengths and interests, right? Kind of open that world up and see what else is possible. And Works4Me, in order to help people do that, includes new services to help bridge that gap, right, between the work that's happening at the provider site. And it can sometimes feel like a really big leap to explore going out into the community. And so there are a bunch of new services that Works4Me has developed to help people with that transition, because it can be, it has to be tailored to the individual, and it has to be patient, right? And so my next slide is just going to give you a little bit more information about Works4Me and some of those services. You can see on the top left, we have explore career options by shadowing different jobs. So that's one part of what we allow participants to do, and go and just see 4 or 5 different job sites and see what they're like. And then say if something is good there, then another service we have is trying out different internship options. I'm going to try working at 3 different places and see how those jobs work out. As I'm sure you know, being on this call, watching this video, you know about our family engagement team and our family mentors. Works4Me also has peer mentors. So if you are watching this and you work at one of the provider sites, then that would be one of your peers. If you're a family member, then say your loved one, you could find peers, similar people who have experienced similar things, right? Moving from working at a provider site and going out into the community. This top right one, taking classes you need, that's a really big component of Works4Me, which is these work skills classes for people to, in a controlled, patient and tailored context, take classes to help them develop the professional and the personal skills. Everything from showing up on time to work, to taking feedback from your boss, to thinking about kind of personal care that's essential for being in the professional world. And then our last 2 ones, some of the other services, and these are not even all of them. Part of those classes include financial literacy. So if you're making more money, what are some of your goals? What do you want to start thinking about saving for? And Works4Me finally is very invested in saying, what are some of the ways that assistive technology can help with this transition? There might be some surprising ways that you haven't really explored. So that's a big part of our program. So you can see we've tried to develop a bunch of different ways. A bunch of different ways for you to explore that transition, see if it's right for you. A core part of Works4Me really is this exploration part and just seeing what's possible. So if this is at all interesting to you, or if you're thinking, wow, this benefits information was great, but I want to know about my situation, the best next step would be to talk to someone at your provider site. And we are connected with our partner provider sites, so they know about Works4Me. They could get you set up. You could do a benefits analysis, and we can go from there and get that information for you. And then finally, we are happy to answer questions. I do know, as I said just a minute ago, like we can answer general questions. It can be sometimes, if you have particular situations, sometimes the answer is often, let's go ahead and try that report, right? Because I think that might be the best way. But there's also a lot of rules of thumb. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Lindsey and Stephen, for your presentation. This again is the Works4Me Family Engagement recording regarding the topic on working and my benefits. Again, thank you all for attending. And if you have any questions, look at the comment box when you get the recording or get to see the recording. There will be a comment box with some follow-up information as well. So thank you all and have a great day.